Every summer, Paradise faces the same nightmare. A wall of fire racing toward the town that already burned once. That sounds impossible, because it should be. The deadliest wildfire in California history reduced Paradise to ash. 85 people died. Entire neighborhoods vaporized in minutes. The town itself was erased. But every year, as the heat rises and the winds pick up, the same question returns with the smoke. Paradise wasn't just a name, it was a promise. And the fire burned it all. Yet people came back. They poured foundations where their old homes had stood. Parents who'd fled with their children returned to teach them how to rebuild. Within a year, new roofs appeared where only rubble had been. But the scars remained. Burned trees still lined the roads. Blackened chimneys stood like grave markers. They worked while ash still stained the soil. And now, every summer, as the air dries and the horizon glows orange again, they watch the ridgeline. Not in fear, exactly, but in defiance. Something keeps pulling them back. Something memory alone can't explain. But to understand the defiance, you have to understand the terror they faced. You have to go back to the moment the town of Paradise was deleted. You may think you know the story of the campfire, but you don't know how fast annihilation can move. November 8th, 2018. The morning started calm, dry air, blue sky, the kind of stillness that should have been a warning. By 6:30 a.m., flames were climbing transmission towers near Pulga. Within minutes, the fire jumped Highway 70 and began its run toward Paradise. People woke to a sound they couldn't place. A deep rushing, like a jet engine where no jet should be. Then came the darkness. Not sunset, erasure. Ash turned the sky black before noon. Streetlights flickered on. Automated sensors fooled into thinking night had fallen. Residents fled in their cars. Heat warped windshields. Paint bubbled and ran. Paradise was burning alive. Power lines snapped. Traffic jammed into gridlock. People abandoned cars and ran through smoke so thick they couldn't see their own feet. It wasn't flame. It was a tidal wave of heat that melted car hoods in seconds. Entire neighborhoods burned in less than 2 hours. Schools became ash. Gas stations exploded. Hospitals stood empty. 85 lives lost. 18,000 structures reduced to foundations and ash. Would you rebuild your home in a place that nearly killed you once? Or would you walk away forever? Beat of silence. What came next defied every rule of survival. People turned back. Some to rescue neighbors. Some to free trapped animals. Some because every direction looked like fire. They came back. Not all, but enough to make the silence break. Paradise was no longer a town. It was ash and twisted metal stretched across empty hillsides. Street signs warped by heat. Foundations outlined where kitchens and bedrooms once stood. Even the swing sets in yards were melted into black curves. And yet, within a year, power lines went up. Fences reappeared. Hammers rang from sunrise to sunset. Parents who had fled with their children returned to teach them how to rebuild. They scrubbed soot off walls, laid concrete over scorched earth, and planted gardens in ground still smelling of smoke. Every action was defiance. This ground still mattered. They weren't rebuilding what was lost. They were daring the fire to come back. Some called it courage. Others whispered denial. A man rebuilding where his home once stood said, "Every time I pick up a hammer, I ask myself, am I brave or am I foolish?" Each nail driven in a blackened wood declared, "We're still here." Insurance delayed claims. Building codes changed mid-construction. The memory of embers lived in every gust of wind. Roofs collapsed during storms. Trees died in ash-choked soil. Families slept in trailers while waiting for permits. Every step forward came with a question. When would it happen again? Paradise now builds smarter. Metal roofs that shimmer in the heat. Concrete siding that won't catch flame. Cleared spaces where nothing can burn. But every precaution carries an unspoken question. Is the next fire already on its way? Do you think resilience sometimes crosses into denial? When does courage become risk? In Paradise, rebirth isn't victory, it's endurance. It's living in the tension between hope and terror, hammering a home into existence while the black forest waits. Paradise learned quickly, building back wasn't enough. Every roof, every cleared space, every fireproof vent was a bed against the next inferno. Every precaution had the same purpose: buy time. But fire doesn't negotiate with metal roofs. Every 30 years, lightning ignites the understory. Small fires once fed the soil and cleared brush naturally. Humans stopped that rhythm. Slowly, the forest became a powder keg. Now, every summer, the wind shifts. Sparks travel faster than cars. Trees, blackened but standing, became matchsticks. And paradise, no matter how fireproofed, still sat in the fire's path. Families watched from windows. Children slept with ears tuned to distant sirens. Every new roof, every firebreak, was both shield and reminder. They'd adapted, but fire hadn't changed. The forest remembered paradise. For some, the precautions became ritual. They walked the perimeter at dusk. They checked wind direction before bed. It wasn't just about fire, it was about control. A psychological shield against the memory of what came before. And yet, the fear never disappeared. Paradise had adapted. But survival wasn't the same as safety. And then summer arrived. But Paradise's survival wasn't about metal and concrete. It was about the people who chose to stay, who watched the ridgelines every summer and refused to leave. I'd rather die in Paradise than live anywhere else. Another resident puts it differently. Leaving would mean they won. The fire, the fear, all of it. I'm not giving them that. Ask if they're scared. They always say yes. But fear alone has never been enough to make someone abandon home. Paradise has become myth made real. A place that died, rose from ash, and refuses to stay dead. Humans return to danger not because they forget, but because they remember too much. This isn't unique to Paradise. Survivors rebuild on volcanic slopes in Indonesia. They return to floodplains in Bangladesh. They replant homes along tornado alleys in Oklahoma. Geography isn't a prison. Memory is. And memory pulls harder than fear pushes. The memory of home, of roots, of life interrupted, is stronger than the memory of death. For some, staying is defiance. For others, it's loyalty. For all, it's a calculation they can't put into words. How much risk is worth keeping what they love? They build defenses, but none of that protects against doubt. Every ember that skitters across the forest floor carries the same question. Is today the day I leave? And still, they watch the ridgelines every summer. They know the color of dangerous smoke. They recognize the sound of fire wind. Some nights, they dream of the fire, the roar, the heat, the smoke swallowing streets. They wake checking for ash on the windowsill. They smell smoke that isn't there. Yet each morning, they rise. They pour coffee. They drive their children to school. They live. What truth would you risk everything to protect? What memory is worth the fire? Paradise burns, but its people refuse to disappear. Staying isn't heroism. It's an obsession with definition. They refuse to let the fire write the ending. They are writing the next chapter themselves. Every rebuilt roof carries history, not just the story of the inferno, but of survival. Memory is the foundation beneath concrete and metal, as real as any nail driven into blackened wood. They wake, and every time, they choose to stay, not because they don't remember, because they do. Each day begins mundane. Breakfast, school runs, planting gardens. But each act is quiet defiance. Life, not fire, defines paradise. History teaches them that nature is indifferent, but memory makes them vigilant, precise, unyielding. Their obsession isn't reckless, it's human. It is the unwillingness to let disaster dictate the terms of existence. And in that obsession, they find an answer to the only question that matters. Who decides what paradise becomes? Not nature, not fear, not the calendar of fire seasons. Paradise decides. And every year, they choose again, to stay, to rebuild, to insist that their home is more than ash. The fire may come again. The black forest may creep closer. But paradise isn't just a place. It's a statement. We were here, we will be here. Every ember on the wind, every cracked roof, every scarred tree is a chapter being rewritten. Paradise may burn again. The people will rebuild again. And that is enough. If your home burned tomorrow, would you rebuild? Or would you start somewhere new?